Everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I am a life and relationship coach, and I'm a guest host on the program tonight uh, for the Narcissistically Abused program that Mark Smith from Family Tree Counseling and Family Tree Brand Life Coaches uh, supports and promotes from his website. We're going to wait just a couple minutes. There'll be some people joining us, I think, here tonight. I have some things I'll be sharing with you. I'd like to do just a little bit of teaching, and I would like to then be answering questions. And if you have questions for me tonight, be sure to write in capital letters, question, and then write your question. I hope it's a short question because it's hard to do lengthy ones or ones where I have to read paragraphs and things like that. It's a little harder to do that on a live broadcast. And I'll be mentioning that again. The topic tonight is entitled 12 Building Blocks for a Real Self. And I already have a few questions that folks have sent in to me and emailed to me and sent to me on my website. You can find me on YouTube at Jerry Wise Relationship Systems channel on YouTube and all my 160 videos or more. You can also go to my website and find all of my free videos on my website with the same name, Jerry Wise Relationship Systems. And I hope you'll join the new website that we have. It's free right now to join the website. And there's going to be some new things happening there that I'll share a little later. This particular material tonight that I want to share with you is kind of an introduction to some things I'm going to be sharing in a master class that we hope is going to be like about 12 weeks long with videos each week, worksheets each week. And I see Celeste has joined us. Hi, Celeste. And there'll be worksheets, and then there'll also be time where we can work together during that master class and have a call, and I work with those folks who are part of the course. And that course is going to be on, kind of family systems, self-differentiation, like stage 3 type recovery work, which is for those who have been abused narcissistically, for those who have been in recovery in their own ACOA folks, adult children of narcissists folks, and those who want and feel they haven't really had a real self or an authentic self, and how can they learn to be themselves and to connect with others, which is a trick, especially if you've come from a dysfunctional background. This particular material I'm going to share are 12 building blocks for a real self, and those are going to be some of the building blocks I'll be discussing at length in the master class. If you go to my website, sign up and get on my email list, then when we have that class ready to go, we're going to be doing some work on that in the next couple, 2-3 weeks, and trying to get that all put into place. And you can join for a master class. And I have a helper assistant tonight who's going to be helping me with the questions. And I think Mark is probably joining us tonight to make sure that we don't have too many troubling trolls or folks like that who want to harass everyone. Hi, Tara, I see. I may miss some of the comments, so if I don't say hi to everybody, I'm sorry. Because I'm going to focus on the material, and it's harder for me to watch the chat. But you're free to chat with one another. Well, I think people are going to be joining us. I think, yeah, it's about 8:05 now, so we'll probably have some other folks who are going to join us. I'd like to go ahead and begin and talk about the 12 building blocks for a real self. And these are the objectives for my upcoming masterclass that I am working on, to pull together all the things I've done over 40 years and present that into material that will help people practically and do things in a practical way, a strategic way, and begin to learn about how they can use family systems way of thinking, how they can use and learn to do the work of self-differentiation. That takes some understanding to do that. And believe me, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And so, having many years ago struggled with my own problems of low self esteem, codependency, dysfunctional family, all those kinds of things, poor relationships, that, hi Sarah, and and having to work through my own issues, because I believed that was important to be a good therapist when I was practicing as a therapist, and now as a life and relationship coach. I'm able to use those skills with anyone in the world, and I am fortunate enough to have clients all over the world. Um, and I do work with clients online, FaceTime, Skype, and I'll be sharing about the new website and what we're putting up there too, and how I'd like you to be a support. Because I think this work is really important for us to share this work and to get the work out there for other people. Because I don't think there's as much there's as many videos or teachers or who are teaching these kinds of things. Virtually every day I have someone coming and saying, hey, I've worked with 3 therapists or whatever, and they've never, talked about any of the things that you've been talking about. Or they will say they don't understand narcissism, or they will say they don't believe or know anything about ACOA issues. And having trained therapists for a number of years, that's not training you would necessarily get in your graduate course. You can specialize in some areas and get a little more knowledge, but I think it's really important to know those kinds of adult child issues as well as the family dynamic issues. And family systems helps to clarify things for people in which they did not feel, they felt caught or lost in their own recovery process and did not know what way to go. And I think one of the reasons why we get stuck or caught is because our paradigm is too small. Our paradigm is based on the imprint that we had from our family of origin. And if that's our paradigm, then we just keep operating in that paradigm and operate inside the box. With family systems, it's a learning how to operate outside the box and outside the paradigm that you have. And that's what seems to be so helpful. It certainly was helpful for me. And I'll share a couple examples tonight regarding that. So, let me get my glasses on so I can read well. The first, one of the first building blocks is to begin to identify and utilize family systems thinking and understanding family systems dynamics and family systems maxims or rules or guidelines. And I see Soren's here and some other folks have joined us. And one of the difficulties is people will come and ask for solutions, and they'll say, hey Jerry, well, what do I do about this? And I'm thinking, that question is a how question, or what can you do differently? And I'm thinking, but you haven't learned how to be different, and you don't understand about being different. So whatever answer I'm going to give you is going to stay within your paradigm, which may not be a healthy, true, or realistic or rational paradigm. And so, whatever answer I might give somebody, if they're not going to change at the root and at the core of their thinking and how they understand relationships, for example, the zooming in, which is what we're so used to doing, and just seeing a small part of what's going on in relationships and with ourselves, if you're zooming in and have a small, um, uh, narrow paradigm, then whatever answer I give you, you're going to use within that paradigm. I want them to broaden their paradigm and widen the view. Then my answers will make more sense. They also will begin to come up with answers on their own when you broaden that paradigm. And a part of that paradigm is family systems thinking. And that so that takes some learning, which is why I recommend books for people to begin to think differently about how they view relationships and themselves. Uh, and family systems begins when we do that family systems thinking, we begin to stabilize and focus the self. And we focus on the self. Widening our perspective calms us down and offers us ways of self empowerment. I'll give you an example, which I've used in the past, and it was one of the first systems or family systems question that I was ever asked. I was a pastor at the time, very anxious, did not know how I functioned with other people in relationships, didn't know much about myself, had probably low self esteem, codependency, all those things that were just troubling, and I just couldn't see beyond them. And I went to see Dr. Stoneberg, who was at the graduate school I was at. He was kind of my supervisor. And I went in to talk to him, and I just said, I've just been feeling really depressed about, I've got this couple or these folks in the church, and they're just, I don't know what to do with them. I feel guilty. I feel shamed. I feel just all kinds of things, and then started to get depressed as a result of it. Kind of stuck. Couldn't really feel like I could get out of it. And so I thought, well, he might recommend I go get some help for depression. I mean, again, that's a narrower view. He'd say, oh, well, if you're depressed, go get help for depression. Okay. But he didn't do that. And he's a pastor and psychologist. But he really knew family systems. And even in his lectures, I would notice he's teaching much differently than the way the other professors are teaching. I mean, he's just got this clarity and just can see so many things. How does he do that? I just, and so I'd love to go to his lectures, took lots of notes. I thought, I got to find out, what does this guy know that I don't hear other places? And so when I told him about my depression, and he then asked a systems question. And he said, well, Jerry, what role does your depression play in the church? And I thought, well, I don't know. What do you mean? What role does I'm just depressed. What do you mean, my role in that? And he said, well, I want you to think about that. And again, he was taking this narrow perspective and widening it by that question. What role does your depression play in how the church functions, how you function with other people, how your depression allows for and fits in with the problems that are happening to you and to the church? And I had never even thought that way. This is a weird question you're asking. And then he used the magic wand and he said, well, let's just pretend, and let's say I wave a magic wand and you're no longer depressed. And you don't have depression, you can't feel depressed. What would you do? and my mind just started going ping, 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 ping. And it was just like, well, now I know what I'm afraid of. Now I know what I'm upset about. Now I know what I'm stuck in. Because I began to see myself functioning without the depression, and I would function much differently in the church or in the relations that and the relationships that I had in the church. And I would do this and I would do that, and I wouldn't worry about this, and I would be more myself. And I thought, how did he draw that all out of me by just one question or two questions? Because he was looking at it from a bird's eye view, and how I function within the church, how the church functions with me, and how depression plays a part in other people not having to function the way they should function. Because if I am incapacitated, they are free to stay and not change. They don't have to change if I'm incapacitated. And so I was protecting them by being depressed. Because if I wasn't depressed and had more sense of self, I would be challenging them more and calling them to more accountability, which I didn't feel I could do or didn't have the confidence to do. So if I didn't, then I just become depressed. And that solves the problem. Everybody stays the same, status quo stays the same, but I'm unhappy. And so, hi Mark, glad you're joining us tonight. And so, that's the beginning of understanding systems thinking. And there are good books out there that will help you to begin to think that way. Because the more you think that way, the more you'll see, the more you'll be able to do, the more you'll be able to be empowered to function in a relationship system, whether at work, in a marriage, and to function. Oh, Mark, you're just, Jerry's my hero. Oh, Mark, you're crazy. And Mark was a great help to me in getting started along these lines. And so I would learn more how to function in relationships and how I function, how I affect them, how I fit in, what's my fit, how are they fitting in with me. And then I begin to have some understanding about what I can do to change my functioning in the system without changing other people. I begin to function and without changing others, and I didn't know how to do that. And I was feeling depressed because I thought I'm going to have to make them change so I can be happy, and that seemed rather impossible and difficult to do. So I thought this is not a good scenario, and it's rather hopeless. And Dr. Stoneberg, as we talked and as I read more books, I remember a title said, "The situation is hopeless, but not serious." And that's a family systems type of maxim, that it may be hopeless, but it may not be important. It may not be serious. And oftentimes we will make things really serious that don't need to be, because of our own paradigms and how we see things in a small way. So, again, if you want to ask questions tonight, please do capital question in all caps and then ask a question. And we'll try to get to some of those tonight. That's number one. Number two, identify and utilize a personal map for self-differentiation. And again, as I've just been describing, how do I fit in? How do I fit and function in this family of origin, in this church, in this marriage, in this relationship, and in all of my relationships? And I was playing the role of depressed leader in which these things could happen. And so I was playing that role, and it kept everybody unaccountable. People didn't have to be accountable because I was incapacitated. I didn't have the strength or empowerment to be able to address what needed to be addressed. And a lot of times depression in family of origin, depression in general, a lot of times depression is there as a symptom of how the relationships are functioning. And that if you can change how the relationship functions, how you function in the relationship, you can the depression can begin to lift if we begin to change how we function in those relationships. So, thirdly, recognizing enmeshment. And I think it's very important that we recognize things that family systems approach talks about, and it's a Murray Bowen family systems approach. You can find books written by him, and there's also some other authors who subscribe to the Murray Bowen family systems approach. Brene Brown, Harriet Lerner, Jenny Brown, Edwin Friedman, many folks, though it's a small in number. You've probably seen Brene Brown on the TED Talks, and Harriet Lerner's well known for her The Dance of Anger, The Dance of Intimacy. And she uses the dance in the title because uh, it is the dance we want to begin to change. Um, and the dance we can change by what steps I do in the dance. And one of the things we want to learn is to recognize enmeshment. How am I fused in these relationships? Because where I'm fused in relationships is points me to where I need to work on detachment. One example with in my own relationship with my mother, I was very enmeshed with her. Um, any feeling she had became a reality for me. And as a child, I think any feeling she had became the child's reality. And we say that. That's how fused we can get. Um, the that enmeshment that we have, and again, we grow up kind of dependent as infants, so we do have to have stages of dependency and enmeshment. That's okay. An infant needs that. But as a child grows, we need greater differentiation. Some parents allow that differentiation, some parents do not and don't want that differentiation. And then we become adults, and it just depends on how far we've gone down the road of differentiation, growing up, being ourselves. Because when we're not ourselves, when we don't grow up, then we stay stuck in the enmeshment, which then creates a lot of symptoms and problems: job problems, relationship problems, emotional problems, depression, anxiety, all kinds of things. And so, if we can identify enmeshment and when it happens, when we fuse too much with others, and that's where you have the circles that overlap. You have the drawing where the circles overlap. That's enmeshment. This is healthy self differentiation, and this is too much detachment or separation. But that overlapness in terms of our emotionality overlaps with the other person. Again, they feel it, I experience it as a reality. And that's too close because it will cause some real problems. And then that enmeshment causes a current to go through the relationship system, um, which then pings anyone who's enmeshed in it, and that creates symptoms or problems. And it'll pop up here and there, different kinds of difficulties. Mom and dad are fighting, arguing, there's some abuse. Their 12-year-old daughter decides to go out and shoplift. Now, is that because the daughter is a kleptomaniac and is just a natural born thief? Probably not. The enmeshment mom and dad have, which create the always fighting problem, then pushes down to the daughter, and the daughter acts out. So kleptomania, or the not kleptomania, the shoplifting then becomes a symptom of the family. And so the more we have less enmeshment, less fusion, the less symptoms that happen other places and in other relationships. Fourthly, we want to recognize and exit emotional and relationship triangles, because triangles is also where we get caught. We get caught in triangles. Many times couples come in and their marriage is not working well. And all they're looking at is themselves and their spouse. That's all they're looking at and going, well, we just fight, or we don't get along, or I just feel stuck, we're not going anywhere, we're not intimate, we're not all those things, the complaints. And over 40 years I've heard plenty of them. And the but their perspective is this big. And so I begin to widen it out a little bit and say, hey, let's talk about your genogram. Let's talk about your family of origin and how you maybe learned how to function this way. Then we find, oh, he's still caught in a triangle with his sister and his mother and him. That was always occurring during childhood. And now that triangle has not been resolved, but we bring that triangle into the marriage. And guess what? We have symptoms and the same kind of stuckness in the marriage. If you can resolve that original primary triangle, you'd be surprised what flexibility and new things can happen in a marriage. And I've seen that happen time and time again. But they never would have thought that my marriage problems would have any connection between my mother and my sister and the triangle that we're stuck in. Never would have guessed that was because we're not thinking in terms of family systems. We're thinking in terms of just autonomous individual people. I'm not affected by anybody but me. And one of the things we have learned is we're really not psychologically autonomous people. Never are we. That doesn't mean we're run by other people. It just means we are not psychologically autonomous. In other words, there's nobody else has any effect on us in unconscious ways, or hi Susie, nice to meet you. Unconscious ways, or in unknown ways. We just think whatever we feel and think is what we're doing. And I think, Bowen said, we are not an autonomous psychological entity. Accept this, my words, and you can thrive and grow. Also, Bowen also said, we have difficulty seeing the part oneself plays in the functioning of others. Just like my depression, I didn't see how it was playing a part in the functioning of others. And I think that that's very important. If we can see those kinds of things, we will have much more clarity, also much better answers for our problems, rather than just these simplified linear kinds of answers. A causes B, B causes C. It's much more of a system that's pinging around, and how do I change my functioning in the system? So we want to detriangulate. Again, all personal maps, emotional maps, we have emotional triangles, and where we get caught. And sometimes there can be intergenerational triangles, and that intergenerational triangle is something that can be happening in my generation, but was a caught place back in previous generations. but yet I get caught up in it. And we can talk more about triangles. I think I've talked about triangles in some of my videos many times, but we could do 3 hours on just emotional triangles. Fifthly, the balance thinking and feeling. Where do I think too little and feel too much? Where do I think too little and feel too much? Because generally, if there's enmeshment, triangles, cutoffs, those things happening in relationships, we will then have symptoms where we feel too much and think too little. The limbic system overrides the executive thinking function. And even when we think we're thinking, we're actually feel thinking versus truly thinking. In other words, our feelings and thinking gets enmeshed, and we want to de-enmesh our thinking and feeling. These are my feelings, these are my thoughts. And that's why a lot of people are, with politics, religion, and other highly charged issues, will feel think. And so if you're talking to someone about politics or about religion, they can't even use their head because it's all overwhelmed with feelings. But they think they're talking rationally and reasonably, and they really aren't. They're just overcome with those feelings while they're talking logically, but it's not connecting. And it's same way with voting. People will vote. They often think because they've thought it out. No, you probably vote the way you feel it out. That's probably how you vote. And I studied political science, and we studied about voting and voting patterns and those kinds of things. And I think that, dealing with feeling thinkers is really exhausting. I saw Soren mention that. It really can be because, well, and then you have to realize and accept, hey, this is a feeling thinker. I am not going to get through to them by thinking. I have to do something different. And that's where we can begin to affect them because we start changing our dance and not the argument, but we might change it into reversals, which I'll talk about in the master class, and doing different things, even pushing the symptoms, and even for religion or politics, you can, instead of pushing back, you encourage more of what they're doing. That can bring down the feeling thinking. It can really bring down the feeling thinking. But I don't want to get off onto that. That's a whole discussion, but it would be a good one to talk about. Sixthly, to identify and practice detachment. Learn detachment strategies. Become more neutral and more separate. Advocating for self, letting them be on the other side of the tennis net, and take back my power, and I want to absorb less in the relationship. I just did a video for my exclusive content on the website entitled "Staying on My Side of the Tennis Net," and I use the tennis court as an analogy for relationships. I'm on one side, someone's on another, and a tennis net's in the middle. Because we need that separateness, but yet we're playing a game back and forth. That's the connectedness that we have. And we need to not play their side of the tennis net. We need to let them be and let them play their side of the tennis net, good or bad, and not go over there and try to hit their ball for them, and to change them. We can decide to go play with someone else, but changing the person playing on the other side is not going to help much. And we often do try to change the other tennis player. So I would be talking and will be talking about detachment strategies. There's lots that could be discussed about that. Well, I'm going to stop there at number 6, and we have 12. I'm going to try to answer a couple questions at this point. Hmm. Great question, Susan. Susan B. My enmeshment with my parents has outlived them. Um, oh, and he asked if someone asked if I could repeat 4 and 5. Yeah, I can. 4 is recognize and exit emotional relationship triangles. 5 is balance thinking and feeling. 6 is identify and practice detachment. Um, my enmeshment with my parents has outlived them. Is it easier or more difficult to resolve these issues now? It really doesn't matter. They're ours to resolve whether our parents are still living or whether they're not. Now, in some ways, maybe it would be better if they were living, and that we could actually do some work with them. If parents are too toxic to do that with them, then we have to. If parents are malignant narcissists, then, quote, they might as well be dead. I don't wish them dead. I'm just saying might as well be dead because we can't work with them to resolve that within us because they're not safe to be around. They're not healthy for us to, we absorb them too much. They're much too malignant and toxic. So we have to do this resolution of these feelings by ourselves or with help, with a coach, with a therapist. And so you can resolve those. My father died in 1985, so he died a long time ago before I started this work. My mother lived much longer, to 93 or so, and I could do more work with her individually. But with dad, he was gone. So I still have to deal with any enmeshment that I have left with him, and we can resolve those issues even if they're no longer around. Because it's not, it helps if you can deal with the real person. But in many ways, we're not dealing with the real person. We're dealing with the person that got stuck in us a long time ago. That might be mom or dad. They may have changed. They may be wonderful people now. Who knows? They may be more wise, more understanding, more loving, more supportive. They've hit bottom and they've turned around. Maybe they were alcoholic, but now they're not. And they're in recovery and they have a different personality. I mean, there can be, people will grow and develop even as parents. But my stuckness is with the previous parent. And so I want to work on dealing with that enmeshment, the hurt, the grief, the loss, the pain, the shame, so that I could get that parent out of me. And that's what we want to work on. So many people want to get themselves out of the family, but they don't know how or don't want to get their family out of them. And that's the work I try to help people to do. That's a tough work, but I think it's rewarding, and when people do it, it's just amazing how that changes things. Because it's easy to just get out of the family. You can just go, I'm never going to talk to him again. I mean, that's not easy, and no contact is not easy. I don't mean to make it that. But it's almost easier to do it in a physical way. It's harder to do it in an emotional way because I want to say goodbye. I want to let them go internally and get out of that enmeshment and that fusion and that imprinting that I got from them. Soren asks, how do I get past jealousy and perfectionism? Well, both of those are two big questions. They're not simple questions. The I do have a video on jealousy, so Soren, you might want to go take a look at that video. I don't remember the title of it, but you can look through them. I think jealousy is in the title, and then of course perfectionism. Jealousy is, of course, a lack of self, a lack of self-regard, a lack of self-love. Jealousy is that insecurity. I've been jealous before, there is no doubt. I've been all these things before. And I've suffered through all these kind of difficulties. So I don't see myself as better than anybody else. I have to do my own work. You can't do my work. I can't do your work. I can help you, guide you, and be a midwife in birthing this work of self differentiation, but it's really not something I can do for anybody. I can just tell them, okay, this is the way we go, and this is the map you want to take a look at. And with jealousy, again, we have to do that work of growing up inside and loving ourselves so much that jealousy does not arise. And with perfectionism, then we want to work on dealing with shame around imperfection, non acceptance around imperfection, and we can work on being mediocre and accepting the mediocre us, which is not easy to do. I remember a therapist telling me, okay, Jerry, I want you to go be a mediocre counselor today. I want you to go be a mediocre priest today, pastor today. And I went, what? And then, of course, everything inside me just starts rearing up like, oh my gosh, what are you asking me to do? Somebody might think I'm not perfect. Well, that's the problem. And first of all, you're not perfect. Second of all, nobody's perfect. And thirdly, you don't need to be perfect to be good enough and to function in life. But I didn't believe that. I didn't know that. So I hope that helps a little, Soren. I hope you'll send more questions my way. Write question in capital letters, and then put a question after that. Oh, and I had some. Oh, I got some other here. Let me do a couple more of the building blocks. Number 7 is see or identify and use emotional systems circuit breakers. When I recognize my triggers and my anxiety and or shame, I'm alerted at that point that I need a circuit breaker. In other words, there's something what is something, nope, I forgot the word, surging through the system that I'm a part of that's causing me to be triggered. There's something surging. So you have in a relationship, somebody puts you down. Then you feel shame, then you feel triggered, and then you either feel depressed or you want to knock their head off. And that's when you recognize those triggers, then you go, wait a minute, I need a circuit breaker here. I need to work on, and I have a whole list of circuit breakers that I was looking for those tonight, but I could not find them. But I have a list of circuit breakers. In fact, we've done a live broadcast on this show in which I talked about a lot of circuit breakers to where we can let that circuit break and we don't have that surging through us. The shame, the accepting that they're putting us down, the accepting that they think we're stupid, accepting all those things which just keep that system and dynamic just flowing and the electrical current going through the whole system. And so we need those circuit breakers. And then we can also practice how to respond in a circuit breaking way. As for example, one of the things I always felt uncomfortable about is if I was asked a question, I felt obligated to answer it. And that if I didn't, I was being contrary, I was being bad, I was being impolite, I was not being nice. Maybe I felt that someone thought I was insecure if I don't answer it. When in reality, there may be some questions I don't want to answer and don't have to. And so, you ask the question of what, if someone would ask me, oh, well, you have a new job, Jerry? Well, how much are you making at your new job? Well, I don't want to answer that question. But should I be authentic? Should I tell them? But I don't want to. It seems like it's none of their business. But I want them to like me and I need them to accept me. So, okay, maybe I should kind of give them a ballpark or something. And, um, and actually, it is me just giving in to create harmony rather than standing up for myself, not shaming them or guilting them, but standing up for myself. And so I did not know whether to be a butt about it, a jerk about it, or whether to just comply. And not knowing there's an option C or a third option in which I can simply say, well, that's, that may be a little personal for me right now, or, that's not really a question I'd like to answer right now. If there's anything else you'd like to ask me about the new job, that'd be fine. And then I'm calm. I'm saying no in a calm way rather than saying no in a reactive way. Well, how dare you ask me that? I mean, that's stupid, you know. But saying it in a calmer way in which I defend and take care of myself. That's a circuit breaker. It breaks the circuit between them and me that I don't have to give in, nor do I have to be reactive and be mean or confrontive. And that helped me a lot when I felt I don't have to be reactive. I can be calm and choose what I'd like. Or, well, why can't you tell me how much you make? Is that a big deal? Well, it's not so much a big deal. It's just something that I'd prefer, and it'd be my preference that I don't really talk about that with anyone. I just don't choose to. Um, and it's not a big deal, but I'm not sure I know why you're asking. Well, I just wanted to know. I'm your dad, or I'm your brother, or I'm your best friend, or whatever whatever the relationship is, or coworker, and that, well, I understand you might, but I'm still not sure why you need to know or want to know. You haven't made that clear. And I'm always wanting to know if someone wants to ask me a question, tell me why you want to ask that question. Don't just ask it, tell me why you're asking that. And I try to give that respect to other people. I might say, hey, I'm wanting to work at that place where you're at, but I don't know if they would pay like they're paying over here where I'm at. Could I ask you, Jerry, about how much you might be getting at that job or working in that practice, that sort of thing? Now that's a whole different story. Now I've got some understanding why they're asking me that. Now, those who are enmeshed and fused don't give you that courtesy, don't give you that information. They just want to know because we are fused and they have a right to everything about me, everything in me, everything I believe, everything I think. They have a right to comment on it, reject it, criticize it, try to change me, and that's a part of that fusion that we have. I have another question from Vicky, I think, Vicci. How do I deal with my boyfriend's family's enmeshment and alcoholism? Now, again, you're talking about enmeshment, which is a big deal, and the alcoholism, which is a whole big universe, also. I mean, if you have a boyfriend whose family has alcoholism, then going to Al Anon and 12 steps regarding that could be helpful. Also, reading Al Anon literature could help you in working with your boyfriend and his family. The family enmeshment is, I don't know that you want to deal with it. That's a lot of people will say, well, how should I deal with? And often I'll stop and go, that's where the problem is. Stop dealing with it. Start focusing on what you want, what you need, given their enmeshment. Given that enmeshment, for example, if your boyfriend's family's parents go, okay, you guys have to be here because we're all gonna, we're all gonna have Christmas together. You got to come Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, stay all Christmas Day, and then stay over the next night. Excuse me. Now that's enmeshment. When that demand is given there, you can decide with your boyfriend or talk with him and saying, that's not something I want to do or can do. I can't change your family's enmeshment. I can't deal with it, but I can deal with it on a limited basis. And so I'd be willing to go one of those 3 days for some time. I would be happy to do that. Well, mom and dad will be furious if I'm there and you're not there. Well, that's not for me to deal with. I mean, I don't have to deal with their furiousness. I'm not going to. Now, you can, boyfriend, if you want to deal with their furiousness, that's fine. But I don't feel comfortable doing that. Your parents are fine. They can kind of get crazy at times or kind of demanding and enmeshed, and but I can handle that on a limited basis. And so I need to take care of me rather than trying to fix or deal with their enmeshment. I certainly might want to talk to your boyfriend and talk to him about how you feel and that that's a problem. And does he recognize those problems? Does he go to Al Anon? Is he in ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics? That's another place where you can do some recovery work and identify what's going on in the family. Number 8, use calmness, courage, and self for empowerment and to oppose resistance in relationships. If the boyfriend was going to resist mom and dad's demand that you be there the whole time, then he would want to use calmness and work on being calm, courage, work on stepping up and being courageous, and use what he wants and what he would like, also talking with you as the girlfriend, and you guys become unified on what you're going to do with those holidays and events. And so we want to use that calmness, courage, and self to empower us to be ourselves. Brene Brown has a very good book, Dare to. Now I can't think of it. Can't even think of it. Brene Brown has a couple of really good books. And she talks about having the courage that you need to be yourself, to be vulnerable, to be calm, to be courageous, and to be self. And she does a good job of explaining that. What I think is interesting with Brene Brown is that she talks about vulnerability. She's kind of an expert in vulnerability, kind of shame. And in her vulnerability, she talks all about being vulnerable. She also talks about self-protecting, self-caring. So it's one thing to be vulnerable, it's another thing to take care of yourself at the same time while being vulnerable. So it's not just opening up all the gates and anybody can do whatever. It's that we can be vulnerable and also protect and defend and care about ourselves. And ninth, dare to lead. I do see that Cherie has dare to lead. There's also, I don't know, I'm not sitting over by my book, so I can't. But Brene Brown, you can look up her books on Brene Brown. She also has a book on something about courage, and I cannot think what it is. I've read it. I know I'm just having a brain fart, so that happens, especially when it's later in the day, and I've had a long day. And Rising Strong is another great book of hers, Tara. Yes. But she talks about doing that kind of work. Braving the Wilderness, I love that one, about standing alone, being yourself, accepting being alone, and also connecting with others. I really liked her Braving the Wilderness book. And she's talking about self differentiation. That's what she's talking about in the book. Um, 9, to see beyond polarities or either or see beyond the dualities and just a dualness where there's only A or there's B. That's we begin to see that there are more options than just A or B. Oftentimes we swing between the pendulum of either giving in, for example, would be one polarity. I give in and just take whatever comes. Or I do B, which is another polarity. I run away, I avoid, I get angry, I get upset. And a part of being a true self is learning option C, which is neither giving in nor giving up. It's a C, and having a C strategy for standing for self while remaining calm and communicating what you need to communicate to the other. And most of us didn't learn that growing up and have a hard time with that. We only see A or B or black and white, and we don't see the third option. So being able to see beyond polarities. Number 10, recognize and own our own immaturity. That's not an easy one, but let me tell you what it can produce. If you know your own immaturity, if you can see your own immaturity, if you can learn where your immaturities are, you can navigate self and navigate relationships much easier. And many times we don't want to recognize our own immaturity because if we often have come from shame-based families, shame-based backgrounds, and so to recognize our immaturity, we shame ourselves for having that immaturity rather than accepting ourselves with the immaturity, because that's how we can grow out of it, is to recognize that immaturity. Another is recognize our naivety, because the more you can recognize your naivety, the more you can be more clear headed, see things more clearly. Most people are not aware of their naivety, and so they just walk blindly into situations and they don't know that that naivety was learned and it was taught, just as immaturity was learned and taught. Well, we can unlearn it and teach ourselves to be more mature, less naive. And I don't mean naive as a derogatory term. I don't even mean immaturity as a derogatory term. It's just where we are. And if we can recognize that, we can be much more of an adult in how we interact with others and much more of a self. 11 is recognize our own reactivity. That reactivity is knowledge, is very important, because then we're recognizing triggers, reactivity, when we get down, when we get anxious, when we get pinged, when we feel shamed, when we feel triggered in terms of CPTSD. That's another thing very important, complex PTSD, which is in which we have soaked and marinated in trauma all of our childhood, and then we have CPTSD, whereas PTSD is more of a one-time event, a tragic or traumatic event. CPTSD is the where you've marinated in it all throughout your childhood, and then that gets triggered time and time again when we're adults. And I saw someone, I didn't see the name, and they mentioned how much they enjoyed the Jenny Brown book, Growing Yourself Up. I always recommend that to clients. It's a good first book to take a look at. How can I begin to think differently about myself? Growing Yourself Up by Jenny Brown. And in fact, I even have some clients who have worked with Jenny Brown as their therapist and worked with Andrea Shera as their therapist, who wrote The Mindful Compass, which is another family systems book. And then they've come to me and wanted to work further in their work. Um, so recognizing our own reactivity will stabilize us and also calm us more if we see that and know that. And then number 12 is ally with our inner child and inner adult to form a higher self. And if we can ally and make as an ally our inner child and our inner adult, we then can form that higher self and become ourselves by knowing what the inner child wants, needs, feels, believes, hopes, dreams, and also the adult who functions in this world and has to function in other relationships. And when they are aligned, you really become a self, the real you, the authentic you. And I think the authentic you involves knowing your immaturity, knowing your naivety, knowing your inner child, knowing your inner adult. So we have to introduce ourselves to these parts of us and learn about those parts of us. And the more you know them, the better we can function, the more healthy we function with them. I think I have some other questions here. Let me see if I need to take a drink, so let me take just a little break. I've been talking for about 62 minutes, and that's just 62 minutes in this hour. I've had some other talking I've done today. The question, well, I think I've kind of answered this question in a number of things that I said tonight. So then I have another question. I think I'm getting there on this, but how do we know for sure what the real self is? Is it the same as the authentic self? Do we intuit it instinctively and or know it consciously when we stop people pleasing and self-abandoning? And I think you're on to something, Stephanie, here, because many times ourselves, our self or pseudo self, becomes a combination of our reactivity, naivety, immaturity, pinging, enmeshment. That becomes what we think is our real self because it feels so normal. It feels like that's who I am. But actually, as you're mentioning, if we stop doing some of those things, then the real self starts to emerge. Once you resist or stop overfunctioning, once you resist or stop pleasing, once you stop self-abandoning, once we stop doing some of these other things, the real self starts to organically come forward. Because I think knowing the real self or authentic self is not hard. It's not simple, but it's not hard. But that if we get the hurdles out of the way, if we get the fake functioning out of the way, the real self starts to be revealed and the petals start to open up and you can see the rose. but we have all this protectiveness and enmeshment and all that, and the flower is all closed up, inflexible, not flexible, over serious, enmeshed, etc., in triangles, and those kinds of things. Once you start picking away at those different um, uh, items, those factors, then the flower starts to come up and go, oh, well, that's what I want. That's who I am. That's what I believe. That's what I want to do. So, thank you, Stephanie. I hope that was, and I think the real self is the authentic self. Um, However, you're right. Well, here's another example of um, the knowing the real self. Well, just asking somebody, do you like chocolate ice cream, or do you prefer chocolate or vanilla ice cream? I don't know. I, I'll eat whatever you give me. Okay, well, I mean that's good that you can get along. But which do you prefer? I don't know. I don't live in the world of preferences. I never did. I never grew up that way. So whatever is whatever. And I think that's where we begin to work at. Do I really like chocolate better than vanilla, or do I like vanilla better than chocolate? I have to ask myself that and ask, what would you like to do? I remember working with Reggie, a therapist I had. He was a great therapist, family systems therapist too, which is quite neat. He was one of the, Dr. Stoneberg was great, and Reggie was great, Reggie Munson. And the, he would talk to me and say, well, Jerry, if you were to go on your own vacation and do whatever you'd like to do, what would you do? Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I've never thought of that. I'm not even sure you should do that. I'm not even sure you're supposed to. And so that's where and I think if you see sometimes on my Facebook or wherever, you'll occasionally see kind of an exotic car or something like that. It's not that I worship exotic cars. I certainly don't. But one of the first things in my letting myself feel and decide what I'd like to do was when I said, well, if I could choose anything, which of course I didn't think you really got to have choices. If I could choose anything, I would go out for a long weekend to Long Beach, stay on the Hotel Queen Mary, and drive a Rolls Royce. And I said, I know that sounds stupid. That's ridiculous. I don't know why any decent person would even think of that. I even felt ashamed for that fantasy. And he was quite excited about it. And he said, well, why don't you do that? And I thought, well, I don't even know if you can do that. Because I'd always looked at Rolls Royces when I was a kid, and I was always so impressed. And they'd all go in to eat, and I'd stay out seeing a Rolls Royce as a kid, and I'd walk around it, look in it, and see what it was like. I just had a fascination for Rolls Royces. And I thought, well, I'll never have one, never be able to drive one, just pretty negative about it. And so I started looking into it, and lo and behold, I'd go stay on the Hotel Queen Mary, the ocean liner that is a resort, and I rent a Rolls Royce. And it was possible. I had the best time of my life and had a ball playing the music I wanted, sitting up on the hood of the car when I was in Newport Beach, and just take people rides. People would come up and look at the car and say, oh, that's so neat. So we'll get in. I'll drive you around the parking lot. Or we'll go where you'd like to go. And just had fun doing it. And I wasn't used to having fun, because I don't know that fun was really a good thing for me. And so I often will now make those pilgrimages of someplace I want to go, and maybe try to get a nice car. Not every time, but it's hey, people spend more money playing golf in a year than it's going to cost you to rent a Rolls Royce. People spend more money on quilting and knitting and other kinds of hobbies because you can spend a bunch. And I thought, well, I don't play golf. I don't do anything fun, hardly. So why can't I go get a car I'd like and just drive it and have a ball? And I did. And so if anyone wants to donate a Rolls Royce to me, I would be very open to that gift. I don't know what I'd do with it. I wouldn't even know where to get it fixed. I'd have to take it down to another city to get it fixed. I've got another question that I can answer. You're free to ask more questions if you have some. And I see knitting is my thing. Yes, but people buy yarn, knitting machines, sewing machines. I mean, they can spend thousands on those hobbies. And then I felt so bad for spending, I think when I first rented the very first one, I think it was like $500 a day, which seemed like a fortune. It was the best $500 I ever, ever, ever spent because it was what my inner child just wanted to do. And staying on the Queen Mary, I loved it. I did the tours. I love the history. I like history. And I like British history, and I like this ocean liner, and I wanted to stay on it, and it was fantastic. And so that was my beginning to kind of having joy and playing and allowing my inner child to play, because I wasn't supposed. You need to be very serious. You need to always be working, work, 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 work. Never have fun. That's what a decent Christian, wholesome man should do. Those kinds of rules. And man, they don't work very well. I have another question from Lifestyle M. I have kept myself shielded and away from humans, mostly interacting online. It's been so many years of cutting off that I no longer feel the need to connect with humans so much. But I also know I'm missing out. The fear of being hurt again outweighs. Also, it feels it feels like it takes up a lot of energy to meet someone. Even when I talk on the phone, I don't reveal my deeper emotions. I use a lot of journaling. I'd rather be alone in my house, just dreaming and waiting someone who matches me will show up one day. But intellectually, I tell myself I must put myself outside my comfort zone. How do I reconcile these dichotomies, or this dichotomy? I am taking a step by step approach and feeling a lot better. I don't want to rush, but life is passing by. Thank you for your time and work. Well, and I think, you can stay in your home as long as you want to. You can stay alone, and just work on being alone and alone with yourselves. Monks, nuns, many people do that, and they can be healthy. If you're an introvert, that can be harder. Social interaction can be de-energizing. For more extroverts, they tend to get energized by social interaction. Other people get de-energized with social interaction. I always want to look at my anxiety. Is my anxiety at play? Do I have too much anxiety that's going on? That's one thing I might be looking at. Then you talked about the fear of being hurt again. And I know about being hurt, and I know about being hurt very badly. And then I have to look at, how am I doing in processing those feelings? Can I do some forgiveness and letting them go? Uh, have I taken the lessons that I needed from that being hurt that I can apply to future relationships in a healthy way? And I know it's hard when we've really been wounded. And again, that's where Brene Brown talks about being vulnerable, but with self differentiation. And so she has a nice balance of that. Um, and often when we have been hurt, it typically involves self abandonment, de-selfing, um, and also learned naivety. And that's often when we get into relationships that are not healthy and that we get burned by and get hurt because we're not seeing enough of the emotional process and dynamics of the relationship. We don't see enough. And so we get in and then we get burnt. And then we'll use overfunctioning or whatever to try to make the relationship work. Then, if you use that, then we get burnt. Then we feel resentful and hurt and pained. Um, so I think working through the fear of being hurt is very important because certainly that's going to keep you overly fortressed. We're going to be more of a castle around us and a lot of fences around us. And though I've been hurt, I don't want to keep up all the fences and I want to recognize that I can get pinged, I can get triggered, but I'm also going to keep my drawbridge down. I don't have to slam shut all of the drawbridge, all the windows, and everything on the castle. I can begin to keep the drawbridge down while also knowing better um, who, uh, being less naive, um, and that you can get from coaching, from therapy, and you can learn relationships better. And those have been really wounded by dangerous people. Sandra Brown, I think it's her name, has, 8 Traits of a Dangerous Man. And she has a couple of really good books that kind of give you, don't be, these things you should not be naive about. If these things are there, see them as red flags. Don't just go falling into that relationship just hoping that you won't get hurt, because many times the signs were there, we just didn't want to look at them, and I've done that as well. The signs were there and I just kept ignoring them. So I have to be less naive and more willing to take care of myself without becoming all fortressed. And I'm just going to go live in a corner um, where nobody can get to me. But that does take some courage. Well, we're at about somewhat an hour and 20 minutes into our discussion tonight. I'm kind of, I wanted to share some things with you before I close too. The new website that I have has got exclusive content on it. Anyone can access that exclusive content for the next week or so, couple weeks. So if you join the website, Jerry Wise, relationshipsystems.com, if you join the website, you can access all the videos. There are 3 videos I put up there now that are not on YouTube. They're only on my website. And they're what I call the going deeper videos. They're a little shorter, but a little more focused with a little more explanation. Also, I've begun to put up workshops, notes, and things over my 40 years of working with people. And we're scanning them and putting up there so people can utilize those. You have access to all those right now. And as we continue forward, each week I'm going to be adding to the exclusive content. And then what we're going to have is we're going to have three different subscriber packages that you can utilize: a bronze, silver, and gold. Is that correct? Um, and they're different prices, and you get different things with each of the subscriber package and plan that you choose. And I think all of them will be a great value for the price that you're paying. And in fact, the top two subscriber, what do I want to say, subscriber plans will even have discounts on sessions, um, group work, even can have customized videos and those kinds of things. I hope to also soon have some coffee cups that have some sayings and some quotes on those that'll be available that we'll be working on. And so you can go get that exclusive content right now if you go to the website and sign up. It's for free. You can sign up for free. And you never have to buy a plan, but if you sign up, then you'll also be on the mailing list and that sort of thing. Um, the We've got also a master class that in the next couple of weeks I'm going to be working on to work on that master class. Those who have signed up for those plans will get discounts on those workshops, like the master class, 12-week master class. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything, but I wanted to share with you those new things that are available because I wanted to make more. I've got, a 5 feet stack high of work I've done over 40 years. And I would like to get it out there to folks and let them utilize it and use it. It's not doing any good in my files at all. And then I want to do briefer videos, like 15 minutes videos each week, and add those videos and do little micro topics. And you can see some of them now, such as togetherness and separateness, anything that hooks you will blind you. And then the last one I did, which was today, was staying on your side of the tennis net and what that means and what that's about. And they're briefer videos, but I think they can really be of help to you. So I wanted to do a little pitch for that. I hope you'll join Family Tree Brand Life Coaches YouTube channel, that you will be joining my channel. And I know Mark would like to have you as a subscriber. So with that, I think I'm going to call it a night. And you're very welcome for me getting to answer some of your questions. I hope I got to most all of them. And thank you for joining me this evening and being a part of the broadcast tonight. And this is Jerry Wise. You'll find me at my website, on YouTube, on Facebook, and you're going to be seeing me some more. I appreciate it. And thanks for joining me. Have a good night.